Hi, my name is Beth Heidorn. I'm the Executive Director here at the Racine Zoo. And today's episode on Racine Zoo to You is all about reptiles and amphibians. So you're going to meet a lot of different animals today from our animal care staff and our education team. A lot of people think, oh, reptiles, I don't want to do that, that's all slimy and what have you. But actually reptiles are one of the most amazing creatures that you can find on this planet. And our zoo, of course, we're stewards of the planet, really like to take care of our reptiles and our amphibians. So what you're going to learn today is they're not icky and we don't want to look at reptiles. We're going to see how fascinating reptiles are, how wonderful amphibians are, and how they are part of the ecosystem that we have here on this wonderful planet. So when you're done, you're not going to think, oh, I don't want to look at a reptile. You're going to think, wow, these are amazing creatures, and I can't wait to come to the Racine Zoo and see these wonderful animals. So stay tuned and have a really good episode.
My name is Paul Miller. I am the education animal and reptile keeper here at the zoo. Routine 3 is the name of my routine. This routine has 25 different species of reptile and amphibian and invertebrate. And working with that many different species, you really have to be aware of all of the different needs. A lot of temperature and humidity requirements, very different for a desert species versus a tropical species. So this routine in particular, you need to be mindful of all of those things, to say nothing of the mammals and the birds that I also work with. It's by far the routine with the most animals here at the zoo, and because of that it offers lots of unique, but I think kind of fun challenges. This is Dewey, our African spurred tortoise. They're also called sulcata tortoises. This is the third largest species of tortoise in the world after the Galapagos and the Altvra tortoise. Dewey is about 15 years old. When she's full grown, she'll be about 100 pounds. Right now she's about 80 pounds. Males can grow to be about 200 pounds. These guys can live 70 to 80 years under human care. When you're working with a tortoise this big, it's important to have them trained to go where you want them to go. I could lift her if I really wanted to, but that would be a strain on me and stressful for her. So instead what we do is we target train her. So we have a stick with a little red block on the end. She's attracted to the red block, and she learns through positive reinforcement that if she follows the red block around and bumps it with her nose, she'll get a treat. In this case, she's getting sweet potato and tomato. I'll set the stick down, she'll walk towards it, bop it with her nose. I give her a double tap on her shell. That's just a way for her to know that she's doing the right thing. It would sort of like a verbal affirmation, but tortoises don't really have external ears, so their hearing is not the best. So instead we give her a tactile reinforcement, 2 little taps, and then we give her the food. And that is a really nice way for us to kind of get her to go where we want her to go.
This is Cheese, and she is one of our most popular animal ambassadors here that we use during our education programs. Cheese is a leopard gecko, which you can normally find out in desert environments over in Asia. Their calm nature make them great ambassadors for our animal programs because they often fall asleep in our hands, which makes it great for the public to be able to get up close and personal while she's in a comfortable setting. And so one of the most often questions that I get asked is, why is her tail so fat? And that serves two main purposes for her. So out in desert environments, food can be scarce and water sources can also be scarce. So sometimes she has to pull from that reservoir that she can hold in her tail. So she can pull nutrients and water to help her to survive until she finds that next water or food source. The other purpose is to help her get away from predators. So when a predator is coming to eat her as a nice tasty snack, they're gonna be drawn to that fatty tail. And what she can do is she can actually drop that tail, it'll wiggle around in the sand, and then she can escape freely. Now, for her, she can regenerate that tail. Sometimes it takes a couple days to even a couple weeks. And so because she can drop her tail, she doesn't end up as a meal. So because cheese was one of our most popular animal ambassadors, we decided to bring in another leopard gecko named Crackers. And Crackers actually came to us from the Como Zoo over in Minnesota. And he's currently preparing to be debuted to the public soon.
This is Harley, our prehensile-tailed or monkey-tailed skink. Monkey-tailed skinks are native to the Solomon Islands, which is a small archipelago off the northeast coast of Australia. These guys are native to the tropical forests there, so they require very high heat, very high humidity. We try to incorporate that as best we can in our care of him here at the zoo by misting him frequently. He's misted 3 to 4 times a day. We also, when we notice he's going through a shed, because lizards will shed their skins, same as snakes, only it comes off in patches instead of all in one piece. We will start him on a warm water bath, and that helps to get the skin, especially off of his long toes. These guys have incredibly long toes with sharp claws that are kind of hook-shaped, and they use these along with their prehensile tail to climb in the trees. These guys are the only entirely arboreal or tree-dwelling species of skink, and they're the only entirely herbivorous species of skink. So these guys are just eating plants. In the wild, they're going to be eating leaves and fruit that they find on the trees. So we try to replicate that in his diet here at the zoo by feeding him a mix of different greens as well as fruits and vegetables like sweet potato and carrot. These guys are incredibly social. In the wild, they'll live in family groups, and the mothers will actually care for the young for about a year after they're born. Kind of a cool thing about these lizards is they are not, they don't lay eggs. They are live bearing. So the female will give birth to usually about 1 baby each year, but it'll actually give birth, not lay an egg that the baby hatches from. And then other members of the family will also help care for the baby.
Snakes often get a bad reputation, but they are actually fascinating animals. They are found throughout the world. They can eat food 3 times the size of their head, and they can go weeks without eating. These animals are absolutely fascinating and really something to appreciate. We have 7 different species of snakes here at the zoo. Let's go meet a couple of our favorites.
So here we have Chartreuse, our anaconda, though her keepers more affectionately call her Charlie. She is a yellow-green anaconda hybrid. So green anacondas are the largest snake that exists on Earth, and they can reach a max of 30 feet. Though Charlie here, because she's a hybrid, most likely will not get to be that long. So anacondas come from South America, where they spend a lot of time in the water. So when you come visit Charlie here at the zoo, you're probably gonna see her in her water dish inside of her enclosure, though she also likes to spend time hiding in her mulch and under her little log hide. So snakes are, like other reptiles, are ectothermic, which means they cannot regulate their own body temperature. So us humans, we can shiver when we're cold to make ourselves warm, and we can sweat when we're hot to cool ourselves down. Snakes and other reptiles can't do that. So they need to go and find places that are the appropriate temperature for their body. So here at the zoo, for all our reptiles, we have to really make sure that we're providing different spots in their habitats for them where they can go and get warmed up if they want, and go to a cooler spot if they need to cool down. So that's why you'll see a lot of different heat lamps in all of our reptile and amphibian exhibits. So Charlie is a resident here in the Discovery Center. She's doing really well here, calm while Paul's holding her, but she does have a pretty big personality for one of our snakes. So she doesn't go out on education programs just because she does like to move around and can be a little unpredictable. But she's really neat to be able to see lounging in her water dish or hiding under her mulch, and guests love to see her when they're here at the zoo, mostly because of that really neat coloration. She's got that neat green and yellow, and makes a really striking snake to come visit at the zoo. So here I have one of our green tree pythons. We have two in our Discovery Center, Hardy and Laurel. Right now I have out with me Hardy. You can tell because he's got a black spot on his nose, whereas his enclosure mate Laurel has a black spot on his tail. So green tree pythons live in Indonesia, off the coast of Australia. They like to spend a lot of time up in the trees. You can see Hardy here is wrapped around this branch, which is how you'll often see them when you come visit them at the zoo. They'll be coiled around the branches in their habitat, just like Hardy is here. So these guys are pretty curious snakes. You can see he's got his tongue flicking out, tasting the air. These guys make really fun education snakes for our education department. They go out on programs and kids get to see them interact with their environment. They're quite docile despite their size. You can see him moving right on up the stick here, and I'm not too concerned. These guys are very friendly snakes as far as snakes go. So these guys are non-venomous, so they will strike out at their prey from coiled up in the tree. They'll kind of move their neck back into like an S shape, which then they'll use to strike out from. That gives them a nice momentum to strike from. For a long time, people thought green tree pythons, since they live up in the trees, are gonna be eating birds. However, a study was done that showed that green tree pythons actually eat mostly mammals and sometimes even other reptiles. Though Hardy and Laurel don't seem to know that, because here at the zoo, they definitely prefer to eat the chicks over mice that we offer them. So when you guys are visiting Hardy and Laurel here at the zoo, you'll often see their keeper misting them with a spray bottle. These guys would live in the jungles where the humidity is quite a bit higher than it is here in Wisconsin. So that's one thing that we do for a lot of our reptiles and amphibians, is we're making sure that their habitats are nice and humid and wet for them so that they can have healthy skin and live a comfortable life. So this is Red, our boa constrictor, also known as a red-tailed boa. She is by far and large the largest snake we have here at the zoo. She is one of our excellent education animal ambassadors. So she goes out on programs and gets to meet the community and teach people about snakes. Despite her rather intimidating size, she is actually one of our friendliest, most relaxed snakes. She's really curious. She likes to move around, smell everything with her tongue, but she's super friendly and chill. But she does require 2 people to handle her simply because of her large size. These guys would be semi-arboreal, which means spend time in the trees when they're young. However, as they get older to this size, which is a whopping 30 pounds for Red here, they tend to spend more time on the ground. Trees wouldn't really support them all that well, and it wouldn't be fun for them to come crashing down to the ground. So here, when we display Red for educational programs, we make sure we've got 2 people who can really support her body so that there's not too much stress being put on her back, since she is used to being on the ground. So boa constrictors, as their name obviously implies, are constrictors, non-venomous snakes. So they don't use venom to go after their prey. Instead, they use their really powerful bodies to wrap around their prey before they eat it. So boa constrictors are ambush predators, so they're gonna lie in wait for their prey instead of actively hunting it. And then they'll wait until a small mammal or even other reptiles come along and strike it and swallow it whole.
So this is Nina, our western fox snake. She's getting her diet right now. Snakes have a very unusual way of eating. There's sort of a misconception about snakes being able to unhinge their jaws. In fact, they have a 3rd bone that connects the lower jaw to the skull that actually helps them open their mouths wider than we can. A snake can actually swallow something that's about 3 times the size of its head. So that would be the equivalent of a human swallowing a watermelon whole. Snakes also have a lower jaw that's in 2 pieces instead of 1. In the center, there are stretchy ligaments that allow it to spread wider. The snake will use that split jaw to sort of walk the prey item down its throat, with the 2 sides of the jaw moving independently, and backwards facing teeth sort of directing the prey item back into the esophagus and into the stomach.
We have a lot of great reptiles and amphibians here at the Racine Zoo. Both are amazing groups of animals. Reptiles, when they have feet, have claws. Amphibians never have claws, so believe it or not, salamanders never have claws. Reptiles are covered with scales, where amphibians are covered with a porous skin that water can pass through, which leads to a lot of special considerations in relation to our care. We have some fantastic amphibians here at the zoo, so let's go meet one of our keepers and some of those amazing amphibians.
Hi everybody, my name's Taylor and I am one of the relief keepers on our small mammal, amphibian, and reptile routines here at the Racine Zoo. And today I would just like to start talking to you guys about some of the animals that I care for on a daily basis. And so the ones that I want to highlight for you guys today are our frogs, our marine toad, who I'm currently holding, but we'll get to in just a little bit, and our eastern tiger salamander. And so one of the things that happens when I go into the Discovery Center every day is that a guest usually asks me, how do I care for these animals without them jumping out of their enclosures? And so the biggest and easiest answer that I can give them is to always know where they are when and before I open their enclosure tanks. So when I come in the morning, I want to make sure I count all 3 of our mission golden-eyed tree frogs. I want to make sure I see our red-eyed tree frog, and I also want to make sure I see this little guy when he's in with our green tree pythons. And so sometimes these little guys can hang out on the side of enclosure walls, but they also can hide on the top of their enclosure tanks. And so sometimes we'll give them a little scoot just to get them off of the lid, but other times we will go ahead and come back to their exhibit in order to service them later. And now the biggest important thing that we like to remember is that we want to make sure that we are moving slowly and comfortably and watching their body language so that we don't spook them or frighten them to make them want to jump to a different perch or even a different area in their enclosure. So by going slowly and working around them, they feel comfortable in their own homes. So on a daily basis, we'll go ahead and we'll change their water. And that's important because these guys as amphibians like to bathe in the water that they have. So sometimes it can get really dirty by all of the dirt and every substrate on the bottom of their enclosure. And so we'll do that, and then we also feed them about 3 to 4 times a week. And these guys love to eat little crickets, but they also love to eat mealworms. And the only time we really see them moving around is when they are hunting those crickets, and you'll see them the most active because they'll be showing those natural instincts to go hunt their prey. And so now we're gonna get into a little bit about specifics about each one of our animals. So we're gonna start here with Kermit. And so Kermit is our marine toad, and he lives in our enclosure with our green tree python. And as guests come to the zoo, they always ask us, do those green tree pythons like to eat that toad? And the answer is no, because they aren't a prey item for those snakes. And this little guy, as you can see by his size, he's fairly large. And so his diet includes any invertebrate or insect, and he's not very picky at all, which is great. And that's why you find these guys actually all around the world. And he's, fairly large, but these guys can actually get to be the size of a dinner plate. And for him, when you guys come to the Racine Zoo, you may see him on the rocks in the back of his enclosure, but you may not also see him because he's gonna be camouflaged perfectly underneath all of the moss in his exhibit. And sometimes he likes to bury himself about 2 feet down, or 2 inches down, and hide underneath the moss. Because he likes to stay moist, because that's what his natural enclosure out in the wild would be. And so now I'd like to talk about our red-eyed tree frog, which a lot of people actually think because of his coloration that he would be poisonous, but he's actually not. And so with that coloration, what he can do is a defense mechanism called startle coloration. And so most often, or more than not, you'll see him sleeping on the side of his enclosure with all of those bright colors tucked underneath him. You'll also find him hiding underneath leaves out in the wild and also in his enclosure as well. And if a predator were to come and frighten him, he's gonna flash those bright red eyes, those bright orange feet, and even those blue and yellow flanks on his torso. And so what that does is that's gonna startle the predator, and that'll give him just that brief moment to get away to safety. And now we have also the 3 mission golden-eyed tree frogs, who also live next door to the red-eyed tree frog, and those guys we actually call milk frogs. And the reason we call them milk frogs is because they have a defense mechanism where they can secrete a white milky substance that is poisonous and foul smelling to many of the predators that they have. So they have that quick instant to just jump away and get away to safety. This is Sally. Sally is an eastern tiger salamander, and here at the Racine Zoo you will actually always more than likely find her underneath her bark log or even soaking in her water dish. Being an amphibian, she can soak up anything through the water that is in her ecosystem. And we actually call her an indicator species. So if you see a lot of these guys hanging out by a body of water and they're healthy, scientists can only assume that the body of water that they are near is healthy enough for them to survive. However, if they start seeing that these salamanders start to get sick or start to leave to go to another body of water, scientists can assume before going out to do more tests that that body of water is actually polluted or has harmful contaminants in it. So you guys can help them out by cleaning up your local beaches or even any litter that is around in parks or near bodies of water. So in addition to all of the amazing reptiles and amphibians that we have on this routine, we also work with some smaller guys who are called invertebrates. And so invertebrates are animals without backbones, and to introduce you to our first invertebrate that I work with, this is a Madagascar hissing cockroach. And they actually get that name because they do in fact hiss. And the way that they do that is they will push their body up against their exoskeleton, and that air is going to move through tiny holes called spiracles, and that's what in fact will make that hissing sound. And so that will scare off any predators, especially lemurs, who like to snack on these tiny little guys. The other invertebrates that we have here that I currently work with are our tarantulas. So we have two different species of them. We have Shelob, who is a Brazilian bird-eating tarantula. And in fact, she could eat a bird if she wanted to, but she doesn't here. She normally eats some waxworms or maybe even a cricket or two, but she is the largest arachnid that is out in the wild, so she could eat a bird if she wanted to. Our other tarantula that we have is a Mexican red-kneed tarantula, and that obviously will get its name from the red bandage that is on its legs. Now, both of those tarantulas have really poor eyesight, even though they do have 8 eyes, so they will use tiny spots on each of their legs to sense around their environment, and they can use those spots in order to smell, taste, and even touch their existing environment. And the last invertebrate that I like to work with are our hermit crabs, which are soft-shelled crustaceans. And those guys you will normally find in a shell unless they are moving from shell to shell, because they like the biggest shell and the brightest colored shell. And now if they find themselves in a smaller shell, they actually can decrease their body or shrink in order to fit that shell from molt to molt.
You know what? I bet today you learned things about reptiles and amphibians that you probably didn't know. The animal care staff here at the Racine Zoo, as well as our education staff, are amazing people to take care of these awesome animals. So you got to meet Dewey, our tortoise, you got to meet some awesome snakes, you got to meet amphibians, you got to talk to a whole bunch of different people and learn what everything is about these animals. What a great episode today. So things are not squishy and scaly and slimy. These are wonderful, wonderful creatures, and I'm really happy that you got to learn all about those today here on Racine Zoo to You. So next time you're at the Racine Zoo at 2131 North Main, don't forget to stop in at our Discovery Center area, as well as the other places that we have some of our amazing reptiles and amphibians. So next time we'll see you at Racine Zoo, as well as Racine Zoo to You. Have a great day.